It had been a long week, the kind where every small victory felt like a mountain climbed. My daughter, Lily, had just completed her third physical therapy session of the week. She's 9, bright as the sun, and tougher than most grown men I served with. Born with cerebral palsy, Lily's movement is limited on her left side. She uses a pediatric walker most days, and when she's really tired, I carry her. I don't mind. I'd carry her across the world if she asked. We'd started a little tradition. Whenever she finished a hard week of therapy, we'd go to Popeyes for a small feast. She loved the buttery biscuits and always giggled when the cashier asked if she wanted mild or spicy, like it was some big adult decision. That Friday afternoon, the sky was heavy with heat, and her cheeks were pink from exertion as we pulled into the parking lot. I parked in the designated accessible spot, unloaded her walker, and helped her down. She had her little green stuffed frog in one hand, something she carried everywhere since she was 4. We were both looking forward to sitting down and letting the world slow down for a minute. Being a single dad wasn't always easy, especially raising a child with a disability, but I'd learned to find joy in the small things. My time in the Navy taught me discipline, clarity under pressure, and how to handle situations that could turn chaotic in seconds. Those skills came in handy more than once as a father, though I never expected to need them outside of a combat zone. Our neighborhood had its quirks. The homeowners association was a constant source of headaches. I kept my lawn neat, my paperwork filed, and my mouth shut, but that didn't stop the letters. Your trash bins were visible on non-collection days. Your garage door was left open for over 10 minutes. There was always something. Still, I wasn't the kind of man to pick fights over petty nonsense. I believed in showing respect, even if it wasn't returned. Lily deserved to grow up in peace, and I'd do whatever I had to make sure of that. Inside the Popeyes, the air conditioning felt like a blessing. I helped Lily to our usual booth near the window and went up to order. The cashier recognized us and gave Lily an extra smile. She beamed back, proud of her independence, even in the smallest things. I turned to look at her, watching as she played with her straw wrapper like it was a magic wand. I smiled, thinking how lucky I was to have her. That's when I noticed the woman walking in behind me. Something about her posture caught my eye. She carried herself with stiff-backed authority, the kind that didn't come from real power, but from years of getting her way. I didn't know her name yet. But in our neighborhood, everyone called her HOA Karen. She wasn't a stranger, at least not to me. I'd seen her around the neighborhood plenty of times, usually pacing the sidewalk with a clipboard or pointing at someone's lawn with disapproval written all over her face. The kind of person who memorized the HOA handbook like it was scripture. But up until that moment, we'd never spoken. I had kept my distance, and she had seemed content to throw her little paper jabs through mailbox warnings and committee notes. In Popeyes, though, she wasn't wearing her mask of polite condescension. Her eyes scanned the room like she was looking for something to criticize, and they landed on Lily. She didn't say anything at first. She got in line behind me, arms folded, lips pursed. I could feel the temperature shift. When I glanced back, she gave me a tight smile that wasn't a smile at all. Her gaze drifted past me to where Lily sat quietly, now humming a little tune under her breath while arranging ketchup packets like toy blocks. "Is that your daughter?" the woman asked, her tone clipped. I turned slightly, keeping my body between her and Lily. "Yes, she is. She seems energetic," she said, drawing the word out like it was a problem. "I hope she doesn't make a mess. These places never clean properly." I didn't answer right away. I just gave a nod, more out of habit than agreement. Her tone had that artificial sweetness that always came just before something sour. I tried to focus on the order screen, thinking maybe she'd let it go, but she didn't. She stepped a little closer, her voice dropping just low enough that it was meant for me and no one else. "Children like her shouldn't be brought into public unless they can behave. I saw you park in the handicapped space. Are you sure that's really necessary?" The words didn't register at first. I looked at her, trying to decide if I had heard right. I did. Her eyes were hard now, her lips set in a way that told me she thought she was right. I stared at her longer than I should have, calculating. My instincts wanted to react, but Lily was watching, and I wasn't about to let this woman become a bigger part of our day than she already had. "She's recovering from a double hip surgery," I said, keeping my voice even. "She uses a walker. That spot is as necessary as the air she breathes. Karen didn't blink. She turned away as if I'd told her something trivial, like the weather forecast. Well, she said, some people just milk sympathy. Kids copy what their parents teach them. Before I could reply, the cashier handed me my receipt. I gave a quick thank you, walked back to our booth, and slid into the seat across from Lily. She looked up at me with those soft brown eyes and smiled. I smiled back, but there was something tight behind it. I could already feel the storm building. We were waiting for our food, and I was helping Lily open a little packet of honey for her biscuit when I noticed the woman again. Karen had ordered a small meal and taken the booth directly behind us, far too close considering how empty the place was. It wasn't a coincidence. She kept glancing over her shoulder, pretending not to look while clearly watching every movement Lily made. I focused on keeping Lily's spirits up. She was talking about how the honey looked like gold and asked if pirates ever used it as treasure. I laughed and told her I'd never seen a pirate trade in honey, but anything was possible. Karen snorted behind us, loud enough for us to hear. I ignored it. I'd learned the hard way that not every fight is worth taking. But Lily was watching now. She scrunched her face the way she does when she senses tension, and she asked if we were still going to the park afterward. I told her we'd see, depending on how she felt after lunch. The food arrived and I went up to grab the tray. As I turned to carry it back, I saw Lily shifting in her seat, trying to adjust her legs under the table. She'd placed her frog on the edge, and it slipped off. She got up slowly, steadying herself with the booth, and took a step toward the floor where it had fallen. That's when Karen moved. She stood quickly, as if Lily's motion offended her, and stepped forward. She said something I couldn't make out from where I stood. I saw Lily freeze. Her knees buckled slightly. Then, out of nowhere, Karen kicked at her. It wasn't a shove or a nudge. It was a swift movement of her foot aimed at Lily's walker, which buckled and slid. Lily fell sideways, hitting the floor hard, her frog sliding across the tile. I dropped the tray on the counter and rushed over. My heart felt like it had been torn open. I slid next to her and checked her arms, her knees, her hips. She whimpered softly, clearly shocked but conscious. Her elbow was scraped. I gently scooped her up and held her to my chest while she cried into my shoulder. The pain was real, but I knew the fear hurt more. Someone gasped. The restaurant was quiet except for the sound of her crying and the distant hum of the fryers. I looked up at Karen. She was standing there with her arms crossed, like she had just corrected a child who had touched something without permission. She almost tripped me, she said, as if that explained everything. I stood up, Lily clinging to me, and took a long breath. I wasn't sure if my hands were shaking from rage or restraint. The room was watching. A man near the drink machine had pulled out his phone. The cashier was frozen, halfway between the counter and the kitchen. She's a child, I said, not shouting, just speaking. She's a child who just wanted her stuffed animal. Karen rolled her eyes and said, if I had trained her properly, she wouldn't be wandering. She called her undisciplined. Then she said something about parents using their kids for pity points, and how the world needed less hand-holding. It was as if she couldn't help herself. Her face was tight, her tone proud, and I realized this wasn't just ignorance. This was cruelty. I turned Lily so she could rest her head on my shoulder and reached into my pocket. I started recording. I made sure my voice was calm, even as my jaw locked with every word. This woman just assaulted my daughter. She kicked a disabled child because she didn't like that she moved. She did it in front of witnesses, and she's standing here trying to justify it. Karen backed up half a step. I saw the flicker of hesitation in her eyes. That's when it hit her. Cameras. Eyewitnesses. Maybe she thought her position in the HOA gave her power. Maybe she believed no one would believe me over her. But in that moment, she realized she had made a mistake. I didn't kick her, she said quickly. I was trying to stop her from falling. I turned the screen toward her. You kicked her walker. You made her fall. She looked around the room, as if trying to find someone to agree with her. But no one spoke up. The silence wasn't in her favor. The man with the phone was still recording. The cashier had finally moved, now calling someone in the back, probably a manager. Karen tried to change tactics. She said she was just concerned, that maybe the girl wasn't safe on her own, that maybe I was irresponsible for letting her move around. I didn't respond to that. I just focused on Lily. She was quieter now, eyes red, Frog clutched in her good hand. I kissed the top of her head and whispered that she was safe. Someone asked if we needed medical help. I checked Lily again and said we'd take her to urgent care just to be sure. A woman in the back said she'd already called the police. That was good. That meant I didn't have to. Karen looked toward the door. Her confidence had drained. She realized finally that she wasn't in control of the moment. And for the first time, I saw fear in her face. Not fear of me, but fear of consequences. I stood there, my daughter in my arms, and waited. The police weren't there yet. Karen shifted on her feet like she wanted to bolt, but something held her in place. Maybe it was the cameras. Maybe it was the fact that everyone was watching and no one was on her side anymore. She looked around the restaurant like she was the victim, like we were all ganging up on her for no reason. The arrogance hadn't completely left her face, but I could see the doubt setting in. I stayed quiet for a moment, letting the tension hang. Lily's breathing had slowed against my chest. She was still shaken, but her grip on my shirt had relaxed just a bit. I kept my hand on her back and looked directly at the woman in front of me. "You want to know what discipline looks like?" I asked, not raising my voice. "It looks like staying calm when someone like you assaults your daughter and tries to make her feel like she doesn't belong in the world." Karen opened her mouth, probably to launch into another excuse, but I cut her off. I didn't need her to talk anymore. I spent 20 years in the Navy, 15 of those as a SEAL. I've operated in more countries than you can name. I've seen what real danger looks like. I've held dying men in my arms. I've pulled children out of rubble after bombs went off in the wrong place. I've faced down enemies who didn't hesitate to shoot at me. She blinked, lips pressed into a thin line, unsure of where this was going. She looked like she wanted to scoff but couldn't quite find the nerve. I've also been trained to restrain myself when necessary, to assess a threat and neutralize it without unnecessary force. That's why I haven't thrown you through that window right now. Not because I'm afraid, but because my daughter is watching. And she deserves better than that. She deserves to see what real strength looks like. I saw a flicker of something in her expression. Disbelief, maybe, or fear masked as defiance. I didn't move closer. I didn't need to. The words were enough. I wanted her to sit with them. She didn't trip. You kicked her. And now the whole room knows it. You tried to act like you were above us, like your little title in the neighborhood gave you some authority. But that doesn't mean anything in here. Not to me. Not to anyone who's actually done something that matters. Karen took a small step back. She looked smaller now. Not physically, but in presence. The kind of shrinking that happens when someone's illusion of control slips away. She mumbled something about not meaning to cause harm, but it was too late for that. The damage was done. Her voice lacked conviction. It was a defensive mutter, the kind people use when they've lost and they know it. I looked around the room again. People nodded slightly. The man with the phone gave me a quiet thumbs up. A woman near the entrance murmured something about pressing charges. I wasn't here to make a scene. I didn't need to. The scene had already made itself. My job now was to keep my daughter safe, steady, and loved. Karen said nothing else. She stood near her booth like she was waiting for someone to give her an out, but no one did. The weight of what she had done had finally landed. And for the first time since I'd met her, she had nothing left to say. The sound of sirens in the distance came just as the tension in the restaurant started to settle. Karen looked toward the door like she was debating whether to leave, but her feet didn't move. Maybe it was the phone still aimed in her direction. Maybe it was the weight of what she had done finally pressing down on her. Lily shifted in my arms, her little voice soft in my ear. She asked if we were going home now. I told her not just yet, but soon. She nodded and rested her head against my chest. The doors opened, and 2 officers stepped inside. They were young but sharp, eyes sweeping the room with practiced calm. One of the employees waved them over and pointed in our direction. The taller of the 2 approached and asked what had happened. I told him everything, keeping my voice steady. I made sure to mention how Lily had been kicked while trying to pick up her toy. I let them see the red mark on her elbow and the scrape on her knee. I handed over my phone and showed them the video I had recorded. The man by the drink machine offered his own footage as well. The officers listened carefully, nodding as they took notes. Karen tried to interrupt a few times, her words tangled and defensive. She said it was an accident. She said Lily startled her. She insisted she was only trying to prevent a fall. The officers didn't argue, but they didn't seem convinced. They asked to see her identification. She fumbled with her purse, hands trembling slightly, and finally handed over her driver's license. I heard her say something about being a respected member of the community. She even mentioned her position in the HOA as if that might help. It didn't. After a few minutes of quiet conversation between the officers, one turned back to her and asked if she was aware she had made physical contact with a child. She didn't answer directly. She said she didn't mean harm, that she was being mischaracterized. The officer asked again, more firmly this time. She finally said yes, but only because she panicked. That was all they needed to hear. They informed her she was being detained for assault, and that because the victim was a minor with a documented disability, the incident could qualify for enhanced charges. She began to protest, saying it was ridiculous, that she was just trying to keep order in a chaotic situation. They didn't argue. One officer pulled out a pair of handcuffs while the other gently steered her toward the exit. Her face turned red as she sputtered about lawsuits and slander, but her voice faded as they walked her outside. I held Lily close, kissed the top of her head, and told her everything was going to be okay. She looked up at me with wide, tired eyes and asked if the lady was going to jail. I told her yes, and that we were going home now. News travels fast, especially in a neighborhood like ours. By the next morning, I had 3 missed calls and a full inbox of messages. Some were from neighbors I barely knew, others from parents I had spoken to only in passing at the community center or during school drop-offs. Everyone had heard about what happened at Popeyes. A few had already seen the video. It didn't take long before someone posted a clip online. It spread faster than I expected. One minute it was a local neighborhood group, and the next it was being shared by people across town. I hadn't planned for it to go viral, but once the story got out, there was no reeling it back in. Some messages were kind, heartfelt notes from other parents of disabled children who told me how often they had felt invisible or judged in public. One mother wrote that she cried watching the video because she saw her own daughter in Lily. Another man said he had served in the army and thanked me for how I kept my composure. Those words meant more than I could say. A few people in the neighborhood were less enthusiastic. There were whispers that I had overreacted or made a private incident into a spectacle. I ignored them. Anyone who watched that video could see the truth. It wasn't about embarrassment or revenge. It was about safety. It was about protecting someone who didn't have the power to protect herself in that moment. And it was about reminding people that titles and false authority don't place anyone above accountability. The HOA released a public statement. They said they did not condone the behavior of the individual involved and that her position had been revoked immediately. There was no apology in it, but they were careful to distance themselves. I figured they were doing damage control. Still, it mattered. It meant she wouldn't be making decisions on behalf of anyone else in the neighborhood. Karen never reached out. I didn't expect her to, but I heard through the grapevine that she had been released with conditions and was facing formal charges. There were people saying she had been difficult for years and that this wasn't the first time she had overstepped. No one ever said anything before because her tactics were usually quiet. Petty fines, warnings, complaints about things like lawn height or porch decorations. This time, though, she had gone too far. People saw it, people felt it, and no one could ignore it. Lily bounced back faster than I did. A few days after it happened, she asked if we could still go to Popeyes. I looked at her and smiled. She had a small bruise on her arm and a bandage on her knee, but her spirit was untouched. She wore her favorite purple dress that day, the one with little stars on the hem, and carried her green frog like nothing had ever changed. She even told the cashier thank you in a big, proud voice. The cashier gave her a free biscuit. I watched her that day and realized something. The world can be a harsh place. People will judge what they don't understand. But Lily wasn't scared. She wasn't broken. She was moving forward. And because of her, so was I. Some nights I lie awake longer than I should, not because I'm restless, but because my mind replays moments I wish had gone differently. I think about how fast everything happened in that restaurant. How a normal afternoon turned into something that could have changed Lily's life if it had gone even slightly worse. I think about how vulnerable she looked on the floor. I think about how tightly she clung to me, not because she was afraid of the woman who hurt her, but because she knew I would be there to carry her through it. And I remind myself that what matters most is what we do next. I joined the Navy when I was young, full of purpose, eager to serve. The training shaped me, made me sharp, made me patient, taught me when to speak and when to act. It taught me that power doesn't come from how loud your voice is or how strong your arms are. It comes from control, from presence, from knowing exactly who you are even when the world around you starts to tilt. I never imagined that one of the most difficult challenges I'd face would come while holding a tray of fast food in a neighborhood restaurant. But life rarely gives you warning. Lily is the reason I stay grounded. She reminds me every single day that strength looks different than most people think. She can't run as fast as the other kids. She needs help climbing stairs and tying her shoes. But I've watched her face the world with more bravery than I've seen in grown men. I've seen her fall and get back up without tears. I've seen her smile at people who stared, wave at those who turned away. And after what happened at Popeyes, I watched her heal, not just physically, but emotionally. She didn't shrink. She didn't become quiet or fearful. She asked questions. She listened to the answers. Then she picked up her frog and went back to being herself. That's the part Karen will never understand. Her world runs on fear and control. She sees someone different and assumes weakness. But Lily doesn't live in fear. She lives in possibility. And that's what I protect. Not just her safety, but her right to exist without apology. Her right to laugh in public. Her right to spill her drink and get back up. Her right to be exactly who she is without someone like Karen trying to make her smaller. I didn't need to raise my voice that day. I didn't need to make a threat or throw a punch. I stood still. I spoke plainly. I let the truth do the heavy lifting. And that was enough. Because sometimes, real power is quiet. It's the look in a father's eyes when he tells the world his daughter will not be dismissed. It's the way a little girl returns to the same restaurant with her chin held high and her smile just as wide. A week after the incident, we were sitting in our usual booth again. Lily had her usual order, and she was talking about her frog like he had dreams of becoming a chef. I watched her, listened to her soft chatter, and felt the weight lift a little. We had been through something hard, but we came out stronger. I didn't need to be a Navy SEAL that day. I just needed to be her dad. And that's exactly who I'll always be.